The day everything collapsed did not begin with noise or drama. It began with confidence so loud it almost felt like arrogance. I was walking past the executive corridor when I heard Richard Kessler speaking inside the glass conference room. His voice carried the same polished certainty he always used when he wanted people to believe he was a visionary. He was talking about how innovation always comes from young minds, how fresh thinking was the future of the company, and how leadership needed to evolve. I did not stop walking. I had already learned that listening too closely to him only reminded me how invisible I had become. For 3 years I had worked inside that company, like a ghost that kept the entire system alive. I was married into the Kessler family, but inside the business that meant nothing more than being tolerated. My name was Lauren Hayes, and to Richard Kessler I was simply a convenient worker with no real status. I built systems, fixed broken operations, and kept entire departments from collapsing. Yet I was treated like someone filling temporary space. I had long stopped expecting recognition, but I still remembered the first time I thought hard work might actually matter. That memory always brought me back to the wedding. Michael Kessler, my husband, stood beside me while his father praised him for making a smart choice in marriage. I remembered how Richard Kessler smiled politely at me, and then joked about how I kept the wedding budget under control. People laughed, and I smiled like it was normal. At that time I thought maybe I could earn respect later. I did not realize I was stepping into a system where respect was assigned by bloodline, not effort. After the wedding, I threw myself into work. The company was chaotic behind the polished image. Everything ran on outdated systems and personal favors. I rebuilt the logistics structure from the ground up. I negotiated supplier agreements that had been failing for years. I turned unstable operations into something predictable and profitable. Revenue climbed steadily, but no one celebrated the work that made it possible. They celebrated outcomes while ignoring the person who created them. There were days when I walked through the office and felt like I was a stranger inside my own work. Employees would pass me without knowing my role. Some even assumed I was part of the administrative staff. I once overheard someone asking if I was the assistant to a receptionist. I ran multiple departments, but inside that environment titles meant nothing if you were not part of the family hierarchy. I began to understand that competence was not the currency that mattered there. Richard Kessler built his world around appearances. He liked the idea of being fair, of giving opportunities to outsiders, while quietly keeping real power within a controlled circle. It was a performance that fooled people who did not look closely. I looked closely every day. I saw how decisions were shaped, how credit was redirected, and how people like me were expected to stay grateful for simply being included at all. I stopped expecting fairness and started documenting everything instead. At first it was harmless preparation. I saved emails, contracts, and operational logs. I organized files with careful precision. Then it became more intentional. I started tracking every process I touched. I wanted proof of what I had built because I could already feel the system trying to erase me slowly. I had seen too many situations where credit drifted upward toward people who contributed nothing. I was not going to disappear quietly when that moment came for me. One of the most important things I negotiated was a supplier exclusivity structure that placed me as the primary liaison for critical logistics partners. I remember the lawyer questioning it at the time. It was unusual to assign such responsibility to one individual. I simply explained that clarity prevents confusion later. What I did not say was that I was already learning how easily people can be erased when they are not protected by structure. Then everything shifted when a new name entered the company conversation. His name was Caleb Morgan, the son of one of Richard Kessler's old golf partners. He arrived with polished confidence and very little real experience. Within days he was treated like a rising star. He had a window office before he understood how the systems worked. People who had been there for years suddenly began adjusting their attention toward him. I watched it happen quietly at first. Caleb asked basic questions about systems I had designed. I answered professionally, giving him enough guidance to function but not enough to fully understand the complexity behind it. He thought he was learning fast. In reality, he was walking through systems built by someone he did not recognize. I could see Richard Kessler preparing something even before it was announced. The pattern was familiar. It always started with sudden enthusiasm. Then came the project everyone began whispering about. It was supposed to be a major expansion initiative that would double revenue. The irony was that I had already been building the foundation for it over several months. My team had created prototypes, optimized logistics flow, and reduce delays significantly. We were already operating the backbone of what they were now preparing to announce as something new. I should have known they would not frame it that way. One evening, my husband Michael mentioned it casually at dinner. He said his father had been talking about a big logistics expansion and was impressed by the progress. He even suggested that I had played a major role in it. I nodded and said nothing. I had heard versions of this story before. Praise that never turned into actual recognition, compliments that existed only in private conversations but never in official decisions. The next morning I arrived early and cleaned my entire workspace like I was preparing for something final. I sent updated reports with refined structure and clear summaries. I expected feedback. What I received instead was a simple acknowledgement that felt empty, a digital reaction that meant nothing. I told myself it was still progress, but deep down I already knew something was being taken from me again without permission. Later that day I saw Richard Kessler at a cafe across the street. He was sitting with Caleb and another old contact from his golf circle. They were laughing and discussing what looked like future plans. I stood outside holding my drink and watched as they spoke about ideas I had spent months developing. Caleb nodded enthusiastically, unaware of the foundation beneath everything he was hearing. I realized in that moment that recognition would never arrive on its own. Back in the office, things moved quickly. Emails began circulating about the new initiative. My work was referenced indirectly, but my name was absent. Caleb was positioned as the lead for a project he barely understood. People congratulated him openly. I sat at my desk listening to conversations that slowly rewrote my contributions into something unrecognizable. It felt like watching someone else receive credit for your own memory. The breaking point did not come with anger, it came with clarity. I was invited to a company-wide meeting where the project would be officially launched. The room was filled with executives, managers, and interns. There was food on the table, which already told me this was not a celebration of collaboration, but a controlled presentation. Richard Kessler entered with his usual confidence, followed by Caleb, who looked nervous but excited. Richard Kessler began speaking about the future of the company. He described transformation, innovation, and strategic direction. I listened carefully as he built a narrative that conveniently excluded the months of groundwork I had completed. Then he announced that Caleb would be leading the new initiative as interim innovation head. The room applauded. I joined them, clapping slowly while feeling something inside me detach quietly. After the meeting, I returned to my desk without reacting. Caleb approached me later asking for access to systems I had built. He was confused about documentation and contract structure. I looked at him and realized he genuinely believed he had stepped into something already prepared for him. I told him calmly that it was no longer my responsibility. Then I walked away because at that point it truly was not. That same day I went to Richard Kessler's office. I carried an envelope with me that contained my resignation. He was on a call when I entered, acting busy and important. When he finally acknowledged me, he assumed I had come to support Caleb's transition. He spoke casually about teamwork and cooperation, expecting compliance. I placed the envelope on his desk and told him I was resigning effective immediately. His reaction shifted from confusion to disbelief. He asked if I was serious, if this was about the project, if I understood the consequences. I answered calmly that decisions had already been made without me, so I was simply making my own. I explained nothing further. Before leaving I mentioned that some contracts required legal attention due to structured clauses he had never fully reviewed. That was all I said before walking out. I did not leave loudly. I packed my desk quietly, organized my files, and transferred responsibilities with precision. I left behind documentation that looked complete but contained subtle gaps only I would recognize. By the end of the day, rumors had already started spreading. By the next morning, systems began showing signs of strain. Vendors started asking questions that no one inside the company could properly answer. The first real disruption came when a major supplier flagged an issue with authorization. They refused to proceed without the designated liaison. That liaison was me. Without it, operations slowed immediately. Then another supplier followed with similar restrictions. Suddenly the structure I had built was no longer functioning smoothly. People began realizing that the system had been held together by one person they had underestimated. Within days, Caleb struggled to maintain control over basic operations. Meetings became chaotic. Reports did not align, timelines collapsed under pressure. Richard Kessler tried to stabilize things, but he was reacting to problems he did not fully understand. The system was not broken randomly. It was simply missing the person who had designed its stability. Meanwhile, I had already begun rebuilding my own path. I registered a consulting structure and organized my independent work. I was no longer inside their system, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could see clearly again. I did not celebrate their struggle, but I also did not feel responsible for fixing it. I had spent too long being invisible inside something I built. The final moment came when I received word that a major vendor meeting had collapsed due to missing authorization clarity. Caleb had tried to explain the system but could not answer basic structural questions. The trust that once held everything together began to disappear. Richard Kessler finally realized that leadership without understanding the foundation is not leadership at all. I never went back. I did not need closure from them because I had already learned everything I needed. The system did not fail because I left. It failed because it never respected the person holding it together. And as I built my new path forward, I finally understood something simple. Recognition is not something you wait for. It is something you eventually walk away from when it never arrives.